connecting community, creating impact. This is the Chamber Link.
Well, good morning and welcome back to the Chamber Link. I am Jane Vangsness Frisch, Vice President of Workforce for the Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo Chamber of Commerce. And today I'm really excited about the show for multiple reasons, but we're stepping back to look ahead. Workforce challenges, economic shifts, and demographic changes are no longer just future issues. They really are shaping our decisions right now, and how we respond together will play a big role in that long-term prosperity of our region, our community, and of our children's futures. So I feel very, very honored today to be joined by two thoughtful leaders who bring both big picture perspective and that local insight into our conversation, and who I think will help us really puzzle through what's really coming next for our region, for our community, our nation, and how we can move forward together. Again, so honored to have both of you with me today. And I'm just going to actually start off, and I would love for both of you to briefly share a background and really what has shaped your lens. I've learned a lot from both of you, not only from hearing you, Rebecca, speak, but Shannon just learning and working alongside of you. So Rebecca, I'm going to start with you, if you would. You spend your time helping shape organizations and communities. Talk to us a little bit about your lens and how that's been shaped throughout the years.
Yeah, so thank you. It's wonderful to be with you, Jane and Shannon, and with all of your wonderful listeners and people who care about the future of the economy. I live in Madison, Wisconsin, and so there's something I think you guys can identify, being in the Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo area, North Dakota generally. You know, Midwestern people are very sort of down to earth and very practical. And my dad was a metal bender at the West Bend Company, which is on the west bend of the Milwaukee River. I was raised in a company town. He worked there for 33 years. My mom was a substitute teacher in school and raised, my brother and me. We were both adopted. And so one of the things that really shapes my lens is practicality. Being a futurist and being an economist can sometimes be seen as very theoretical and esoteric. And while that is interesting to me, at the end of the day, what we're talking about with the future, you can't put into your boots and into your hands. It's kind of useless. So as a futurist, I think the easiest way to help people understand what that is, historians study the past. Journalists take an oath to report on the facts of what's happening now. And professional futurists study the trends that we can start to see emerging in plain sight. And we try to help our clients design the most positive futures that are possible. So as a futurist and as an economist, I look sort of at those two things as a crosshair, like what's happening in the economy, what is coming in the economy, and how is that going to shape folks on the ground. And that's how Shannon and I actually met, is many jobs ago. She was here with us in Wisconsin, helping us forge a new path forward for our workforce.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rebecca. And, I've had the opportunity to hear you speak and connect with you one-on-one, and just really excited for you to come to the Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo region. And we'll talk about that in a bit, what's coming up next week. But Shannon, you're an important connector for this conversation. So I'd love the audience to hear a little bit more, that those of you that don't know, kind of the lens that has shaped your perspective on our region economy, but also how you approach this work.
Awesome. Thanks, Jane. Well, hello to all of our listeners. So Shannon Full, the president of the chamber here. Rebecca, it's so great to see you, my friend, and we can't wait to have you here in the Fargo region. For when we talk about this later, it will be phenomenal to be all around Rebecca's energy. I will say that she is intoxicating and intriguing. So, but very similar to Rebecca, grew up in northwestern Wisconsin from a very middle-class family. My father, a heavy equipment operator, my mother, a phlebotomist in the medical field, and really grew up with that hard work and authenticity mindset in everything that we do. And so when I stumbled into the chamber industry out of the private sector. Right out of college, I was both in the hospitality area with Applebee's Corporation, and then also in the special events with a large country music festival. But when I moved into the chamber role, the piece that I've been most intrigued with over 25 years of doing this work in the chamber industry is the power of people in a community and how coming together can shape the trajectory of where that community is going. It's much more than a sole single leader, but it's really how those leaders have courageous will to surround themselves with others and have the ability to truly make an impact and a difference on not just the region, but on companies and on individuals. And so when we think about the work that we are doing, it is all encompassing of workforce and public policy and small business, all the things that we're talking about, how we achieve our mission of growth and prosperity. But at the end of the day, it boils down to the power of people. And it's been a very fulfilling 25 years to be able to lean into and be pleasantly surprised by what comes out of very committed individuals and small groups. So
thank you for that, Shannon. I really appreciate that courageous will perspective that we don't often take a step back and reflect. I think that's what's important about Rebecca's work and what we're having a conversation today is that we don't often take that step back and really think about the why of what our future and what the right now tells us. So Rebecca, you, as I mentioned, as we started today, you spend your time helping organizations and communities. You're coming to ours next week to look ahead and prepare for change. What really drew you to that futures work and what keeps it relevant and urgent today and keeps you busy?
Yeah, well, there's this futures work scratches two parts of my brain. One part is the intellectual part. I've always been a person who's tried to figure out what's coming, and I'm sort of entrepreneurial in that way, and how we could take the trends that are happening and turn them into some sort of a strategic advantage. That's really why I started my company. I saw the baby boomer bulge followed by a smaller group of Gen Xers and then a bigger group of millennials. And now we've got the Gen Alphas coming after them. And I wanted to help people build organizations that next generations would want to work in. And so that's some of how I came to this work. But the other part of my being that this scratches is, some of your listeners can probably identify with this, but there is a force within me that is just hell bent on building brighter futures for the next generation. I don't know. It feels like a cause. It's like an animating force. I joke all the time that I wake up every day thinking about, how can kids I never meet have a better life than I did? And that might sound weird for some of your listeners, but my best friend Gretchen, I've known her since we've been 5. She said that when she had her first kid, she realized wow, my whole purpose in life is to be a mom. And somewhere along this journey with my company, I realized wow, I am really committed to making sure that your Jane and your Shannon, your grandkids have it better, as good as they can have it. So those are the things that really propel me in my work as a futurist. So you kind of bring the brain power of what do we see coming? Can we quantify it? And you guys are in a great position. Your region is in an amazing position to shape a brighter future. But then also it's how do we call forth the best of people to say, what are we willing to do today so that our kids and grandkids and maybe our great grandkids have it even better than we did?
Well, thank you for that. And I think that's really what we're all about is prosperity, right? For now and into the future. So when we come back here in a few minutes, we're going to hear from what Rebecca thinks about the national perspective and what trends communities should know about and learn about. Coming up, well, good morning again. Jane Vangsness Frisch, Vice President of Workforce at the Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo Chamber. Before we jump back into the conversation, I want to briefly highlight an upcoming opportunity for both employers and community leaders who are thinking about exactly what we're discussing today. So next Wednesday, January 28th, we at the Chamber are co-hosting a workforce forum entitled From Vision to Action. And that's really what our focus is here today. This half-day forum is designed not only to move us forward from implementation to vision to action, but by giving our employers those practical tools, real data, and future-focused strategies. And we're especially excited that one of our guests today, Rebecca Ryan, will serve as that forum's keynote. She's going to provide us some insights on what we can plan on hearing next week. But we're hopeful that you'll join us, and that idea of moving from vision to action connects directly with us here today. So, Rebecca, I'm going to start back with you, and then we're going to move to Shannon. But I'm so intrigued by what you think, Rebecca, from a national perspective. What trends really should communities and communities like Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo be paying attention to right now?
Okay, so as a futurist, I want to encourage people that you have a really good command of the fires that you're putting out every day. You know, if you're an employer, you know how many open jobs you have, you know what your 2026 plan is in terms of deliverables and overhead, et cetera. But I want people to really be thinking around the corner and to be thinking about how some of these seemingly small things stack up. So Jane, your question was, what should we be paying attention to? The first thing is baby boomers, huge demographic, retiring and then coming back, having what's jokingly called a failed retirement. And the reason I bring this up is because many, many, many communities, especially us in the Midwest, are having a level of leadership churn that is not only impacting our organizations, but it's having a secondary knock-on effect for organizations like chambers of commerce and civic organizations and large nonprofit organizations, because in most of our communities, the very same leaders who lead their companies also tend to be the people who sit on boards and lead civic and nonprofit boards in the community. So we're hearing every week from clients who are saying, oh my gosh, 50% of my board just turned over and I'm doing everything brand new, all the orientation with board members. So we can't underestimate how much this leadership churn impacts us. Now, the other piece, of course, a lot of people are talking about AI. I'm going to bring some ways of thinking about AI. We did a little economic analysis of the Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo MSA and the sort of conservative mid and high impact of the impact that AI will have on jobs in the workforce. And the bottom line is, you guys need more workers no matter how much work AI does.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
It is so true. And AI is not coming for very many jobs in your larger metro area, but AI will be increasingly used to do parts of jobs across many, many jobs. So those are just a couple of the things that I think people need to keep their eye on for the future.
Thank you for that. And so insightful. And Shannon, from your perspective of knowing and understanding this community, especially the business perspective, talk to us about why this is so important to bring Rebecca here, why this impacts our community and what we need to do to kind of enact on this.
Yeah, I am so excited for next week.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even stand it because there's a few reasons. One, it is always helpful to be able to take a minute and pause and look ahead. So using foresight to really, and I know Rebecca and I talk a lot about foresight. How are we making the decisions for tomorrow based on what we have today, and really being proactive in nature? Again, taking that courageous will, because it's a lot easier to just go with the flow as it is now, but really having that courageous will to say, I'm going to intentionally put time aside, resources aside, people in the right spots to look forward. I think about it from our region. I am hugely fueled by competition. I'm a very competitive person. So competitive advantage is a big deal. You cannot have competitive advantage if you can't see into the future. And so when we talk about workforce, a lot of the work that we do on a day-to-day basis is to solve problems of today, right? The now, right? Not the next. And so what I'm excited about this workforce forum is it's going to be a balance of both. We're going to talk about some of the most critical challenges that are facing our employers today, what we're doing with some of those around skill-based hiring, changing the way in which we look at hiring. That not only addresses today, that looks at tomorrow as well. When I think about the work that the Chamber is doing now that we're really excited about is that work-based learning in that future workforce. What are we doing to really make an impact on those future leaders that are that we want and we need? As Rebecca said, we need workers. That's not going to change, right? And so, how do we make sure that those students, whether they're college or high school, see themselves in this community 10 years from now, not just what we are doing in education and in schools right now?
And I think that work-based learning is one of those linchpins in the long game of workforce and I think that is one of the things when we had talked about inviting Rebecca, and the first time that I heard her speak it's one of the linchpins. There is not one thing that's going to solve our workforce issues. Rebecca, you just made a good point. We cannot hire our way out of this. We cannot AI our way out of our workforce needs. And so how do we become more nimble, but also more thoughtful about the long-term strategy with our workforce? And one of the things that we're really excited about with the forum as well is we're inviting in individuals to talk about skills-based hiring. We've been on this show before and we've talked about what our employers are saying through our industry sector partnerships and our community wide partnerships of really understanding that we have the people, but maybe not quite the right fit, but we're just not getting them to come to our front door. And so after we hear from Rebecca next week, we have that opportunity to talk about skills-based and actually a very hands-on workshop for those HR professionals in the room. So we're really, really excited about this. But getting back to Rebecca, some of the things that you're going to talk about, and one of the things that I think I want to know and want to take away, we always talk about future ready. And I think, Shannon, you actually just said this about being skills-based, our skills-based, our work-based learning. But what does future ready actually mean when it comes to the workforce?
Okay, so I think I have a pretty easy way to think about this, and I just want to make sure that I'm basing this in a way that every listener can get their head around, because of course, the human resources community, the people who are hiring managers, they have one way of thinking about work. But then the everyday listener who's maybe listening to this on their way to run and get groceries right now, or coming back from a daycare drop off, they're an employee maybe who isn't sitting in a decision-making chair. And I think the easiest way to think about if your workplace and workforce is future ready is to ask yourself this question: is this a place where my grandfather would be more comfortable working, or where my grandchild would be comfortable working? And because what we're noticing is, and I'm 54 now, right? I'm a Gen Xer, and it would be very easy for me to build a workplace and a workforce that looked like me, that operated like me, that was like, I'm getting a little slower with technology. I'm just being honest about this, right? I don't have a TikTok account, right? But that is not the kind of place that the next generation is going to want to work. So I got to think about, am I building this for the me I was or for my successors? And I think that right there is a really good leveling question for anybody. Does your workforce reflect a place that your grandkids are going to get excited about working for, or a place that your granddad would recognize and be extremely comfortable working for?
Yeah, that's a great perspective. I'm an elder millennial. I think that's what the term that they utilize for me. And I had and I have the opportunity to work really closely with our Young Professionals Network. And I had one of my first meetings with them last week, and I had an elder millennial moment. It was an elder moment. And I had to take a step back and said to my two colleagues, I think I missed the mark. And it was really insightful. And really appreciate that perspective of my grandchild versus my grandfather. And, I look at everything, Shannon and I often talk about that we had the influence of our grandfathers in our life. I still have mine. You recently lost yours, but also learning from that perspective of how they had to be nimble. My grandfather, who will turn 101 in a few days here, really had to be nimble. Everything from going from a horse to a car to now having an email address, right? And so I think that perspective is really helpful. And when we come back in a few minutes, we're really going to kind of dig down into what does this mean for Fargo-Moorhead and the why behind this as well. Shannon, before we go to the break, is there anything that you want to share from your perspective that you had with some of those elder millennial moments? Or I guess I'm not sure where you're at in that scheme of time.
Yeah, no, I can relate very well. Rebecca knows this. Being in the industry that I've been in, it's a small group that across the country that work on chambers. And I will tell you that when I got into this, I was that young whippersnapper with, ready to go, lots of energy, lots of passion, still have lots of energy and lots of passion. But now to look around the room and see the room filled with leaders younger than I am and what they expect out of me, it's both an opportunity and a responsibility, and it's pretty exciting. So
very exciting. Well, when we come back, we're going to hear a little bit more from Rebecca Ryan and Shannon Full. Welcome back. Jane Vangsness Frisch with the Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo Chamber. Very excited to be hosting the Chamber Link this morning. Today, I'm joined by Shannon Full, our president and CEO at the Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo Chamber, and Rebecca Ryan, who is a futurist and our keynote speaker for our upcoming workforce forum next week. In our first part of our conversation this morning, we talked about why looking ahead matters. Really appreciated Rebecca's perspective on, do we want our workplaces to be somewhere our grandfather is comfortable working or our grandchildren? And so that was great perspective, and I think kind of leads into this next part. I want to spend this next segment, getting to learn a little bit more about practical application of this. We hear consistently from employers that workforce challenges cannot be solved by one organization, industry, system working alone. And we know that. And at the Chamber, we really try to be that conduit. We know that where collaboration really becomes strategy is what makes the difference with this. So let's talk about that from a regional standpoint. And Shannon, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this because I know that this really has been your vision. You've been with us in the Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo region for over 5 years now, right? And workforce was a priority of your perspective when you came in and took this opportunity. Talk to me a little bit about why workforce challenges are not just solved by the Chamber, frankly.
Yeah, what a great question, and a great lens to enter this into is that workforce is complex, right? When you talk about to any company that we sit down, and it is definitely one of the, it is the top conversation that we have when we're meeting with CEOs, with senior level leaders, with HR leaders, is how can we attract, retain, and develop high quality employees to take us not just to where we are, but to take us to our next level. And when we look at that, it is a combination and multi-pronged, everything from how we're attracting workforce here, once we get them here, how are they acclimating to the area, how are we keeping them, how are we helping them grow. And when you think about all of that, that really does encompass education, both secondary, post-secondary, all of our colleges. It also includes so many nonprofit organizations that work with workforce to help make sure that employees are getting, residents are getting what they're needing to advance. And then when we think about all of the industry users, the end users, so you're either a job seeker or you're a company that is needing workforce. How are we making sure that we're pulling this all together to streamline approaches to make it easier for companies to find what they need, but also easier for job seekers to find what their livelihood is going to look like? The whole point of this is fulfillment, right? So how do people find what they want and be fulfilled within their jobs, as we spend so much time in our jobs with our colleagues in a company? How do we get that fulfillment, that takes everybody working together to analyze it, to identify it, to lean into where are our strengths and where are our weaknesses, who should lead this work, who should support this work. That's where it really takes the that whole perspective of the good for all, right? But also we have a significant role in that coordinating and convening part, which is so exciting to us.
Yeah, and I often get the question, my title, Vice President of Workforce, what the heck does that mean?
Right.
And, I really try to help people understand that I'm the conduit between training and education, between our employers, the workforce activators and navigators within those nonprofits and government organizations. You talked a little bit about this in our first segment, Shannon, that both you and I, if you've ever seen Shannon and I on a golf course, we're very competitive, but we're competitive also in supporting business and industry and making sure our region is prosperous. So this next question is maybe a little bit on the competitive note. Rebecca, I'm interested to know, Shannon talked about us being the conduit and that we have really tried to reshape the workforce strategy within our region to be focused on collaboration and connection. Talk to me, Rebecca. You see this from a national and international perspective. Although you're grounded here in the upper Midwest, you have seen it all. So Shannon and I want to know who does this well, and as a workforce region, and what should we be striving to here in Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo?
Okay, I love this question. And you guys probably know more of what's emerging now, like what the up and comers are. But the model that I was on the ground floor when it started was in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, this goes back before Nashville became the place where every woman had her bachelorette party, her hen party before her wedding. So this is
the Nash Vegas.
This is old Nashville. Yeah, this is pre-Nash Vegas. And Nashville was struggling. They were a tier 2 city. They were a city that wasn't known for anything, and their healthcare community was in crisis. And they went to their Chamber of Commerce, our colleague Nancy Eisenbrandt, who's now retired, and they said, gloves are off, Chamber, what can we do? So talk about competitive, Jane. The very first thing that Nancy did was she looked at where nursing grads had moved, if they'd gone to Vanderbilt, for example, where they'd moved, and they started to target Atlanta and some of the major southeastern cities where these nursing grads went. And you know what their song and dance was? We have a higher quality of life in Nashville than you have here, wherever you are. We're more affordable, we're more walkable. And they started selling the community attributes. They were like, listen, you can get a job anywhere. Nurses can get a job anywhere. Why should you live here? So that was the very first thing they did. That was like a response to the healthcare community saying, we're in crisis, you need to help us, and we want to go get the talent. So that's one thing that's very different, because a lot of chambers and workforce development organizations will sit back and just help the incumbents, spiff up their marketing materials, but not like go out and hunt. So that was the first thing that I thought Nancy did that was really cool. And then it started to build. Then she started to link and leverage other organizations, national workforce councils, to make sure that like her employer communities had the best of the best thinking, the best strategy, et cetera. And the metaphor I want to create for you here is that Nancy took the Nashville workforce effort from a program helping healthcare to a system where, kind of like you guys are saying, where K-12, technical colleges, post-secondary education, employers, trades, they're all in the mix together. It's kind of like the equivalent of, I don't know if any of you were music nerds in school, but you practice and practice and practice your instrument. And then when you go to band class or orchestra class or whatever, you hear how you sound with everybody else. And when you all are working together, same tempo, same score of music, same conductor, you can do something absolutely magnificent. And there is not one labor organization or employer who can do this by themselves. Because, and the simple reason is this, that you've got your you're on your back foot with respect to how many people you need to choose a job in the Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo region. You have to sell the job and you have to sell the community. You've got to be able to do both. So none of us can do this alone. We need each other. And if you can go from being that solo violin player to being a part of this orchestra, that's where the resonance is and the magic is.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
so true. And I think I'll add to that with Rebecca. You know, the Nashville example is such a good one because that was placemaking before placemaking was cool, right? And when we talk about placemaking, we're really talking about what is the stickiness that draws somebody, right? It's the interest, the excitement, it's everything from what our fabulous partners at the CVB are doing to bring visitors here, because visitors then think, could I see myself here in this community, right? It's what our downtowns are doing to create vibrant events and folkways to make sure that we've got things that people align with and they see themselves as, I'm part of this community. It's where our partners at the EDC are really doing the work on talent attraction strategies, specifically and intentionally. What type of talent are we trying to attract here? Very similar to what Nashville did in the healthcare realm. But I think as we look at all of this together, what's most exciting is that as you start to build momentum to this, companies now see you as not just a nicety anymore. Now it's a necessity, right? Where companies are saying, this looks different for me. Like, I have a great HR team. I can sell my company really well. To your point, Rebecca, we now have many company leaders that are seeing the work that the Chamber and others are doing, our Icebreakers program, our concierge program, that we want to lean in strong. Who better to sell the community and to partner with you to sell the community than organizations like ours? And I think that's the secret sauce that Rebecca maybe talked about. As we start to get that type of momentum, that's what's going to separate us from the pack.
you know, we were talking with a colleague yesterday, Shannon, you and I were, and we were talking about downtown. We were talking about how we have neighborhoods in our communities now. We've always had them, the North Fargo Roosevelt neighborhoods and those kind of things. But thinking about your neighborhood, our neighborhood is where the Chamber is at, that we've really started to identify as a community of neighborhoods and the power of people. But that's true for our workforce as well. One of the things that we have been so strong about is really thinking thoughtfully about our industry sector partnerships and working collaboratively and together. And that's something that I heard not only in your example, Rebecca, about Nashville, but Shannon, as you were talking, that's our strategy, is about bringing people to connect and convene and around a common mission. Because I think if we try to do this work in a vacuum or separate, we are going to be incredibly unsuccessful. So with that, we're going to go into a break here and head on to our last segment when we come back. Well, welcome back to the Chamber Link. We are so excited to have Rebecca Ryan, futurist, and our keynote speaker for next week at our Workforce Forum. Again, that's coming up January 28th. That's Wednesday from 11 to 4:30 over at the Armory in Moorhead. It's only $33 to attend. For those of you that are HR focused, it's 4.5 CEU SHRM credits, which is a great opportunity for you to earn those. If you're interested in learning more, head over to Fargo-Moorhead-West FargoChamber.com. And again, as we enter in this final segment, time always goes too quickly when we're thinking about this, but I wanted to bring the conversation back to both the bigger picture and what comes next for our region. We talked about trends related to workforce and who we can be competitive with and who's our moonshot, which is Nashville. Watch out, Fargo bachelorette parties coming soon. But now I want to focus on vision, leadership, and action. So, as we look ahead, and I'm interested, to hear from both of you on this, but as we look ahead to 5 to 10 years and share what gives you confidence about our region's future, and maybe what we really should be doing as whether people identify as educators, employers, leaders, what we should be doing now to help that future forward perspective. Not all of you at once.
Rebecca, you want to jump in?
The question about what should you be focusing on now, this is a paradox for me because I think you should always be focusing on what's coming next. Now you should invest just a little bit of time thinking about what's coming. But maybe this is a question that people could use that would drive both. What should we be doing now and what should we be thinking about next? And by the way, I want to tell you, we put a survey in the field, and when we asked people how much time they spend each week thinking about the future, on average, they spend between 90 seconds and 4.5 minutes a week thinking about the future. And I think if we have any responsibility for people, whether as the head of a family, the head of a department, the head of an organization, the head of a community, we owe it to them to invest more than 90 seconds a week. So I hope that for those of you who can join us at the forum next week, that'll be one of your big investments in thinking longer term. But here's a question that I think anybody can use to bridge between now and next. And it is simply this. Imagine that a competitor entered your space. So if you're in healthcare, somebody came in. If you're in ag tech, one of the bigs started to look at your niche that you're in. Imagine that a competitor came in and they said, in the next 5 years, we are going to completely wipe them out. We're not going to buy them. We're just going to put them out of business. And the question is then, what are the first things that they would do to put you out of business over 5 years' time? And most people listening to this know the answer to this question, but there are things that maybe they've been putting off or investments they just haven't been willing to make, conversations they haven't been ready to have. But when you start to feel a competitor, on your back, it forces you to address some of the things that you should be doing. What about you, Shannon? What do you think?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the big piece of this is, how do you capture and leverage? It's all about leverage for me, leveraging relationships and leveraging resources to take us and identify where are we now, where do we want to go, and how do we get there? And a bigger question to every listener is, what is your specific role to get us there? Whether that be your role as someone in your company, your role in the community, however you define a community, right? Because communities are defined however you want. What is your role in all of that? And how do we leverage those relationships and resources differently? So when I think about your question was around as what gives me confidence specifically to this region, without a doubt, it's the people, right? The fact that we are finding courageous will, we are challenging one another, we are challenging the status quo. As a visionary, I live in this world. But how do we capture and leverage the diversity of industry we have here, the consistency, the hardworking, authentic nature that this region brings, awareness of all of those assets, and then taking those to the next level? That's really the piece when I think about kind of what's missing or the secret sauce. How do we capture all of that in some type of a community or regional vision that allows us then to identify all of those assets, not just the physical assets, but the people assets that we have also, and then leveraging those to the greatest and next extent? You can tell when I start to talk about it, I get really excited because I know that this community, this region, is positioned for greatness. Just look at the growth we're currently having. When we're growing 3 times the national average, that's happening for a reason or for multiple reasons. How do we make sure we're able to lean into that even more?
I appreciate that so much. And I think one of my biggest takeaways is that we need to invest in thinking about the future. And next week is going to be a perfect opportunity to do that. No matter if you are working focused on your people programs, or you are a leader, or you're a colleague, and you're just, you want to thrive in the region. You want our region to be that next Nashville. We'll talk about it that way. Attend that workforce forum. I think hearing from Rebecca, sitting around with your colleagues, really being not just spending those 90 seconds, spending from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., really thinking and investing in the future. So I'm going to quickly do a round robin before we close out. 30 seconds we have. Shannon, what is one word that describes our future in Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo?
Opportunity.
Rebecca, what's your one word?
Limitless.
Limitless and opportunity. And mine is exciting.
Perfect.
So with that, I want to say thank you so much for today's conversation. It has really been purposeful and thoughtful and inspiring. So I really do want to say thank you. And again, don't forget about Wednesday, January 28th, our Workforce Forum. We're convening leaders and partners to turn that vision into action, and really excited about it.
You won't want to miss it. I promise you. It will be well worth your time.
Well, thank you for everyone listening. Thank you, Rebecca and Shannon, for sharing your perspective, and the future is bright. Thanks so much for joining the Chamber Link today.